This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier.
Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Today's guest is an industry expert with over a decade of experience. He's held multiple leadership roles, and he is currently the Director of Operations at Alta Material Handling. Kevin Blacker, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Of course, it's great to have you, Kevin. We're going to jump right into forklifts because that's one of your areas of expertise, and it touches the lives of every facility professional out there multiple times a day or at least a few times a week. That being said, what are the three things that you would say matter the most to a facility professional with regard to forklifts?
Yeah, I would say that safety, maintenance, and uptime.
Okay.
Those are the three big items that I see.
Safety definitely resonates with me too. We get called in quite a lot for safety issues related to the floors. So let's talk about that a bit. When you speak about safety, what do you mean, Kevin? Can you expand on that?
Sure. Safety, number one, starts at the operator, right? So an operator, a properly trained or fully trained operator is key to everything. A trained operator would be a certified operator. They commonly call it a license, a forklift license, but it's really a certification. It's one of the first things that OSHA will ask for if there's an incident in a facility. Where's the operator's certificate or license? The second will be the maintenance records of your machine. And then they'll do a facility tour and look at conditions. But safety based around that, I'd say starts number one with a trained operator.
Well, and if safety is the paramount thing, are there places that you'd typically recommend people go get the training for their? Is it in-house? How do they do that, Kevin?
Well, safety training is something that we offer at our company. It's offered in a number of facilities, but we have trainers that will come to your facility on site. They do a combination of classroom and actual operator training. You can have it off-site at one of our facilities. We have 9 in New England. The trainer will come in, or your employees will come in. They'll present the class and then do an observation. So it's really 2 parts. They'll do the educational classroom, and then do some observation before they issue a certificate. Again, that's something that you can pick up. Most forklift dealers will have something like that. We offer it at Alta. Again, through our 9 facilities. So it is something that should be first and foremost for an operator, anybody running a forklift at an industry, in a facility.
Okay. I know we've talked in the past too about safety with a forklift, whether that be the environment, the piece of equipment itself, the operator. What else do folks need to know, and how can they stay ahead of it?
That's really a good question. Number one is the conditions of the facility. What are the conditions like? Are the floors clean? Are they free of debris, dust, things like that can impair a driver? An operator also, from a facility standpoint, can also protect its surroundings or the surroundings of the forklifts with what we have, a perimeter lighting or spotlights of different colors. The majority of forklifts out there are required to have, or should have, a reverse beeper or a sounding device when a machine is backing up. At least some operate forward in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
But these lights are set to project ahead and behind the forklift. Unfortunately, what I see in a lot of facilities nowadays is employees with earbuds and headphones on, and they're doing the job, and they're probably doing a great job, but they're not as aware of their surroundings as maybe they should be. So with the earmuffs on, they may not hear that sensor, that beacon. And these lights project ahead and really forward or reverse. It lets a civilian or an employee on the floor see a forklift coming, maybe before they hear it. They also have the perimeter lightings, which creates a zone, a safety zone around a forklift. So anything inside these perimeter lights is considered in a hazardous area or at least a potential hazard. When you're outside the perimeter, you're outside the safe operating area of the forklift. Those have become really popular, just as a visual deterrent as well.
Is that in addition to, or does that replace the blue lights that I see on a lot of forklifts?
Those perimeter lights are in addition. The blue lights are the number one because they will light an aisle in, like I said, in advance or behind a forklift if it travels forward and reverse. The perimeter lights or the zone lights help you when you're more in an open area or coming out of an aisle. They project
Understood.
those lights out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earbuds and things. Is that a facility compliance issue with OSHA? Is that even allowed?
I can't really speak to the exact terms on that because in some facilities you're required to use ear protection. In some, I don't honestly, Jay, I don't know if there's an actual regulation for that.
You understood. I think we touched on, is it high vis seatbelts as well?
We did talk about that, and that is important too, even for a facility manager or safety or a coworker. Forklifts today, they have different layers of protection. There's an operator switch that an operator has to be present, weighted on the seat for it to run. Others have the seatbelt guards where the seatbelt has to be secured before a forklift will either run. Regardless of those items, if you're a safety manager or somebody on the floor, you can observe an operator, an employee running a forklift with this bright, almost orange, yellow-orange belt on their waist. So you can tell from a distance whether they're secured to the machine. That's very important too. If there's ever an impact or some mishap, the operator is secured to the machine, won't fall out. Operating safely, it goes hand in hand with the training.
Understood.
Yeah.
Any other attachments or advice around just safety itself before we kind of move on to the maintenance aspect of them, Kevin?
There's a number of things we could go on. I think we touched on the most important. Training is the most important. Whatever you can do to protect yourself and other employees in the facility, the lighting, et cetera, the beacons. The industry has advanced so far now that some of the systems, some of the forklifts come with like a telemetry system that has a LiDAR built onto it. So it's actually projecting ahead of the forklift and it will see something blocking its path before an operator, and it can automatically slow the forklift down as it enters an intersection or it sees an obstruction now. So forklifts are at least the operating side of it, have really advanced. We have those systems in a couple of facilities in New York, and it's day and night. The operators are well aware of it now, have caught on that they come into an intersection. If they don't slow down, the machine's going to slow down for them. So LiDAR is becoming like another generation of safety equipment.
Is that similar to the sensors on cars and trucks, vehicles?
Very much so. Okay. Very much so. It's even reached a little more advanced in that in a facility, you can issue somebody with a name badge, and it'll have an actual sensor on the badge that the machine can pick up an employee from a distance just who has a badge. And if they're in an adjacent aisle or in a corner, the machine will react accordingly without the operator. It'll slow down. Now, the operator never loses control of the machine. Ultimately, they have control, but this will take the machine and slow it down for them and react to either the person via the tag or LiDAR of the obstruction. That it's a big advance.
Yeah, that's very advanced. I was not aware of that. Clearly the reason we're doing the show is to bring some of this information forth. But other than just the show itself, where would either an EHS manager or safety manager or facility manager find some of this detail if they didn't already know about it?
They could visit a website like our own, a facility like ours, Alta Material Handling. There is a number of publications. I can't think of any right off the top of my, but there's one or two industry publications where you can actually research this. They have excellent websites. The manufacturers, really put on great videos, demonstrations on their websites. You can really learn a lot.
Excellent. Maybe in a follow-up, we'll put some in the notes of the podcast here, and people can use it as a resource.
Perfect. Yeah.
Really good stuff on safety. If something comes to mind as we're moving along, please bring me back to that, Kevin, if there's anything we forgot. But maybe move on to the maintenance of the equipment itself and, how to, yeah. If you could just speak to the maintenance of this equipment, because again, I mentioned you have a unique perspective on this because you're not only overseeing your own facilities and your own operations with similar challenges as to everyone in our audience, but you're also seeing what happens to the equipment when it comes back and gets repaired by you. So what's the most important thing for us to talk about regarding maintenance of a forklift?
Well, maintenance, I'd say have a schedule, be on a schedule. Um, whether it starts with the manufacturer's recommended daily checklist, which every operator's manual would have. If you're not implementing something like that, then that's first and foremost. As each operator takes possession of the machine, they go through the checklist, make sure everything's functioning properly before they get on the machine. That's helpful. Having the machine actually on a maintenance schedule, whether you call it preventative or operative or something like that, or periodic maintenance, it's really about getting the machine inspected on a regular basis and having those wear items checked. If you're running an internal combustion engine, you're changing the oil and filter and that pretty regularly. If you're running an electric powered machine, there's a lot of motors in electric components that are exposed to the environment. So if you're in an environment that is dusty and you're manufacturing or whatever, these areas that are vented electrically need to stay clean, needs to stay clear. So that's part of that maintenance schedule. Having the chains and carriages measured and the forks measured all add up to preventative maintenance, which is part of that whatever you determine based on the hours. Most manufacturers recommend 250 hours for service. Things that can be caught, which leads to the most important thing, right? Uptime. So if we can catch something in advance, a freight hose or a one carriage or something like that, that could prevent downtime, or in some cases, safety items that could prevent injuries and accidents. I mean, that's what it's there for. Tire conditions, things like that. So having a maintenance schedule, having it performed by a reputable company, or if you have technicians in site, making sure those technicians on site are properly trained on what to look for. That's a service we can provide too, but that's going to be the key. And of course, the facility itself. If you're talking about maintenance on equipment, then the facility really has to be maintained. And in aisles, we touched on a little bit, aisles kept clear, debris, things that machines can run over. We can talk about that forever, but aside from the daily equipment maintenance, that kind of facility maintenance, it's a challenge for me, being that we are a service shop and we do repairs. We're running across oil leaks and hydraulic leaks and grease, and we've got to keep that floor clean, not only for slip and falls, but for equipment and maintenance. So it's a combination. There's a lot to go into it for increase the amount of uptime that you have, to maximize uptime. Equipment maintenance schedules are probably the number one.
That makes a ton of sense. And I'm going to run kind of backwards here to make sure myself and the audience caught what you recommended. It's somewhere around 250 hours, maybe more, maybe less as necessary based on the environment, the dustiness, etc. Check all wear items like any other equipment, preventive maintenance schedule, and maybe most of all, a daily checklist.
Right.
Did that capture what you're recommending, Kevin?
Yes, I think it does. Yeah,
okay. I'll actually touch on the building maintenance or the facility itself too, because you mentioned slip and fall. I'll add the word trip, because slip, trip, fall is such a common language when we get called in, because we're a flooring company, and whether it's an uneven surface, whether it's something that has pits in it, or there's a joint that's failing and was never addressed properly, an isolation joint, a control joint, anything that machine's rolling over is problematic, because it could have product fall off the equipment, right? It could injure an employee. It could damage the equipment itself. So our world's definitely tied together there, and it's one of the most common reasons we get called into a facility to do floor work. And many times they'll say our cost of repairing our forklifts is through the roof, and we need to improve that. So it's cost mitigation too.
Absolutely. And, Jay, we see it on a regular basis. We get called out, and, for people out there run forklifts with cushioned tires, we call chunked. They get chunked out. They're hitting a curb. They're hitting an uneven spot, even the loading dock plates, things of that nature with a hard edge, taking chunks out of the tire at a time. And if you're an operator driving on a tire, missing a chunk, it's not a pleasant thing. So it leads to all kinds of unpleasant employees. We're talking about poor performance. It all adds up. And you speak of the slip, trip, and falls, and we're a company that really, even internally, puts safety first. And we have recorded, thankfully, a downtrend. But our number one injuries are slip, trip, and falls, and most of them are facility related. And we run into this constantly. Yeah.
What are some of the best practices you've seen? Like you have a long list of customers, and sure, some are repeat offenders or their machines come in more often than others. Is there anything in this, and you've already given a ton of advice, but is there any good practice you've seen out there, or a handful of good practices? Anything that we haven't already stated around the equipment or the facility?
I think, they go hand in hand. So if you're keeping a clean facility, and I know it's difficult in some manufacturers, and we get a lot of downtime. We get a lot of repairs based on things that our machines have run over or picked up. So broken pallets, loose shrink wrap that gets tied up in wheels that tie up equipment, things of that nature. Certainly the surface they're running on is really important. These are machines that weigh thousands of pounds, carrying thousands of pounds with no suspension. So every impact that machine has goes right through the machine. It's going to find the weakest point, whether it's the operator or whether it's a bushing or something else in the machine. It's going to ruin that first. And so the best thing, facilities, long term are probably number one. The forklifts operating over those facilities, keeping it free of debris. In some cases I know that's easier than others, or hard. In other cases it's nearly impossible, but it all ties back to maintenance and uptime.
Thank you. One thing I didn't ask you about is traffic flow. Any advice for, and would this even apply to our discussion, but traffic flow is something that we see facilities changing quite often. We'll do line striping layouts with them and apply them. But is there any best type of traffic flow or things to avoid for the forklifts?
Well, I think if you're doing the lines and things, you have identified the problem areas. Traffic flow, my experience shows that if we're one way or one direction, an aisle, it's not always manageable, but stopping forklifts from crossing paths in warehouses certainly is a big factor in collisions and impacts. So, however that be your facility layout, if it's possible, having the flow almost in one direction all the time, circular or in one aisle one way and another aisle another, that helps. We've seen that. Some of our customers have gone to the automated systems now, where they have wire guided machines that do exactly that. The robotics now are becoming even more popular with the employee challenges we have. So, the automated machines are designed to go pick and pull and keep going, and they're operating generally in one direction each aisle. So travel is important.
One-way traffic, you said wire guided machines. I'm personally not familiar with that.
Yeah. They're not phasing out, but the wire guided is an implant in the concrete itself, and the forklift has a sensor in it, and it's like your old track cars that used to have slot machines, and it just travels within that wire guidance. Some are pre-programmed to travel specific routes, and some operators can handle, but they're not allowed to go outside that track, so they're dedicated in one path. The new thing, the more advanced, is the system I sort of described earlier with the LiDAR, where it is picking up sensors planted within the facility, and it will automatically track itself and run itself through the facility based on a predetermined route. And with the LiDAR, it can adjust to obstructions, it can adjust and change speeds and everything to accommodate people and traffic flow. So those are systems we're seeing more and more of out there.
Is there any particular, it's fascinating. If you find forklifts fascinating, I'm fascinated right now by what you're teaching us. So, is there any particular type of equipment? And I don't mean brand, but, style that suits a manufacturing environment better than another, and maybe why?
Well, it's hard to speak to that because it is really facility based. It depends on what the facility is doing. And literally warehouses are designed around forklifts at times, where now we have forklifts we can adapt to environments. But, depending on the aisle size, depending on the stack size, depending on the rack size, you adapt you buy a forklift or adapt a forklift to work in your facility. I can't say there's any one thing. It really depends on the facility.
Understood. That makes sense.
Some are running electric machines. Some are running cushion tires. Some are running pneumatic tires, depending on the environments they're running in. So it really depends on the environment in the facility.
Okay. Excellent. You touched on, and again, your unique perspective, you see all of this and you're managing it yourself or overseeing it with your team. Anything else to touch on in terms of your facilities themselves and the challenges that overlap with your customers' challenges, because you are essentially in the same role?
Well, I think that's exactly right, Jay. I am in the same position. I have operators and I have forklifts traveling through my facilities on a regular basis, whether it's in and out of the service area, whether it's on a test path, whether it's inside or outside. We face the same thing: keeping the aisles clear, keeping the floors clean of debris, keeping them maintained. We see all of that, the checklists and so on. We're doing repairs, so we're starting that machine from scratch anyway. It starts with the checklist and inspection, and then goes into the service. And we're loading trucks on and off docks, so we have the same loading dock facilities and dock plates that we deal with. So keeping them maintained and in proper order is a big part of it. I mean, it's the same. I do the same thing. I'm telling people about. So yeah, we all face the same challenges.
Excellent. Great information. Really good information, Kevin. So you've been teaching us about forklifts and safety, and I'll tell you, I'd be shocked if there aren't a handful of EH&S managers out there just loving this information, because you're helping them get their jobs done too, I would imagine. So you're teaching us a lot. Let's learn a little bit about you. What makes Kevin tick? Throw yourself back however many years. What advice would you give the 20-year-old version of yourself now that you know what you know?
I would have done this a lot sooner. I started in the automotive industry and I love cars, and I was self-employed for almost 10 years running an automotive related facility. And if I had known, and I don't want to sound that I'm not excited about forklifts, but if I had gotten into this industry sooner and seen the development and really grown with it the way I have in the last 10 years, I would have done this sooner. I really would have. And I know that sounds crazy. I don't live and die forklifts, but I really enjoy what I do. Forklifts come in many shapes and sizes, and there's different challenges to each. And really, I'm excited to face it a lot of days. I'm excited to see what we got.
Good for you. That's a great position to be in. That's fantastic.
My wife doesn't agree, but
any time for anything outside of work? Any hobbies?
I'm limited. I do work a lot, but just I have a motorcycle. I admit it. I enjoy riding that. My wife enjoys riding with us. I have 3 kids, and we try to spend as much time with it. They're all grown adults with young kids themselves, so we really try to spend quality family time, whatever it might be, camping or just hanging out in the yard at a fire. So no, it's not that exciting. Hobbies are limited. Actually, you know what my best hobby is? It's my honey-do list. That keeps me busy. That's like a lifetime hobby.
Hey, they sound like pretty good hobbies to me. What kind of bike do you have?
I have an '05 Harley Electric Glide, which I am happy to say I bought brand new almost 20 years ago. I brought it home in 2024, still riding it today. Just had it out last weekend and enjoyed every minute of it. So yeah,
That's a nice bike.
yeah, it's I've had it custom painted and I've done it. I personalized it like every Harley owner does. But I really enjoy it. I found a bike that I never thought I would own a motorcycle with a dashboard. But I do, and I enjoy it. So
I find that I used to ride myself, and either people strip them down so there's nothing but the wheels, the frame, and the seat, and the essentials, or you have a dashboard and bags, and you load it up, and it's a camper on two wheels. So
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We found time to enjoy it. Yep.
Kevin, we've learned a ton from you. Like we said earlier, any final words of advice at all for EH&S or facility professionals out there?
I think, Jay, we really did touch on it. It starts with the plan. It starts with maintenance. It starts with training, and all of that leads to uptime, which is what we're all about, is just keeping the product flowing, keeping the machines running. No, I'd love to share a real piece of wisdom, but I think it all starts with the plan, having a plan from training, maintenance, and on out.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. How could people get in touch with you, Kevin, if they wanted to further the discussion or reach out with any other questions they might have?
Well, sir, there's two ways. I have an office phone. My direct line is 603-717-7509. That's my direct line in the office, or I have a cell phone, which I'm available for my customers and for my employees, for anybody really, at 603-738-7541.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for all the knowledge. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that can be applied right away for our listeners. So, Kevin, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. And thank you to our listeners and our viewers, because we're bringing community together and hopefully adding some value. So if there's anything you learned or a nugget you picked up today, any insights, tell a friend, recommend the show. Kevin, thank you again. And this has been another exciting episode of Facility Rockstars. We'll see you next time.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.